Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Dakota from DentalPro. Today, we're going to be talking about something that a lot of you have been asking me to actually talk about. And this is actually a topic that I have wondered myself when I was going through my undergrad. So yeah, I think this would just be a really good discussion. Now, when it comes to this topic of whether dental school is harder than undergrad or if undergrad is harder than dental school, I have one opinion, and my opinion comes from one university that I went to in undergrad and the dental school that I'm attending currently. This conversation might be a little bit biased just because this has been my own experience and not necessarily everyone's experience. But with that being said, I do feel that the experiences that I've had in my undergrad as well as the experiences that I've had in dental school have probably been mirrored by other students in other dental schools as well as in other universities for undergrad. So let's actually get to the actual topic of whether dental school is harder than undergrad or if undergrad is harder than dental school. When we use the term hard or difficult in a school setting, we really have to quantify what that actually means. So I'm going to quantify the categories of difficulty here. Right off the top of my head, the things that I'm thinking of in terms of what makes dental school difficult or what made my undergrad difficult were probably these four things right here. And that is academic difficulty, physical difficulty, emotional difficulty, and competitiveness. If we go down the list here, let's talk about academic difficulty, or in other words, how hard were the classes in undergrad versus how hard are the classes now in dental school now that I'm in there. I will say that it really depends. It depends on the modules that we're on right now. So in my school specifically, my school does it a little bit different than some other schools might. We go off of a module system. Basically, we will have one main theme. Like for example, we'll take a class on immunology, and we spent 2 weeks just going over immunology as our didactic courses. Now that's on top of we have dental courses as well. We've got oral health science, preventative dental medicine. We've got ethics. We've got personal finance, lots of other classes. But if we're just talking about the didactic courses, the basic sciences, so to speak, I feel that the level of difficulty for basic science really depends on which module you're actually on. So for example, right now I am in a neuroscience module. In fact, I'm in week 3 of 4 weeks of neuroscience, and this module is kicking my butt.
Watch your profanity.
It is such a hard course because it is actually a comprehensive course that you would take like in undergrad. That's, identical to a neuroscience course that you would take in undergrad, 4.5 credits, but we're taking it in 4 weeks. So you kind of do the math and you kind of figure out a neuroscience course in undergrad is pretty hard, and I have somewhere between 10 and 14 weeks to do that depending on what school you go to. But here I'm doing it in 4 weeks. Right now I would say that academically my studies are harder than they have ever been when I was actually in my undergrad. Now looking back in hindsight, there's definitely been some other basic science classes that I've taken in dental school that were not as hard as some of the classes that I've taken in undergrad. For example, my physiology class when I was going to school at BYU, Idaho, that was probably the hardest class I've ever taken. Even considering all of the classes that I've taken in dental school, I still feel like physiology was the hardest class I've ever taken, period. Now, some of you that are in your undergrad, you might not actually go through a class that has that level of difficulty because it really depends on the school and it depends on the program that you're in, the major that you're studying. But for me, when I was going and studying biology at BYU, Idaho, that was intense. It was definitely difficult, but it prepared me for the classes that I'm taking now. And I think also that has a lot to do with how difficult dental school actually is, because I know of some students that have majored in a non-science major in their undergrad, and then when they transition over to dental school, they struggle a lot with the basic sciences. So you have to look at it that way as well. So it's not going to be the same for everyone. Coming from my background, having a science major for my undergrad, I feel like it's relatively comparative academically to what I did in undergrad. Maybe at times a little bit less, maybe at times a little bit more difficult. So yeah. Now in terms of physical difficulty, how physically demanding dental school is versus how physically demanding an undergrad study is dental school definitely takes the cake on this one. Right now, in my first year of dental school, there's not a lot of things that are that physically demanding. Once I get into my second year, it definitely will be, because I'm going to be in the sim clinic a lot more. And then eventually when you transition into third and fourth years and you actually practice as a student dentist, and then ultimately on to actually practicing as a dentist, your job is going to be physically demanding. Your back is going to hurt, your neck's going to hurt. I mean, even if you have the perfect posture, it is back-breaking work. And so that's part of the profession. Now, in terms of undergrad and its physical difficulty, I didn't think that undergrad was really that physically demanding. School specifically. With that being said, though, I worked all the way through my undergrad, and I actually worked in a dental office for 4 years, and that was hard because I had to manage doing my undergrad while at the same time doing everything that had to be done at the dental office. And so, your body is tired from working, and then at the same time, you're just mentally drained from being in school and studying. So that's one scenario. If all you're doing in your undergrad is just studying and you're not working, then I don't think it's really that physically demanding. So yeah, to kind of wrap that up, dentistry, dental school, that definitely takes the cake. Now let's talk about emotional difficulty as the third category of difficulty here. I think that the emotional difficulty of undergrad and dental school are really about half and half, in my opinion. Some people are going to say otherwise. Some people will say that undergrad's easier. Some people will say dental school's easier. But emotionally, for me, I feel like it's about the same, but the reasons for why it's the same have changed. When I was going through undergrad, and I'm sure many of you that are going through undergrad right now that are trying to get into dental school are in a phase right now where it seems like every action and every plan that you make in the day is directed towards getting into dental school. Your motivation to study and get good grades is based off of you trying to get into dental school. And, once you are in dental school, that completely changes because you no longer are stressed and just emotionally drained from trying to get accepted because you're past that. But now you have different emotional challenges in school. For example, no one wants to be the lowest ranked student in their class. And it's natural for people to want to have a sense of accomplishment and feel like they have a certain level of proficiency in whatever it is they're doing. So when you're at the bottom of the list, that can be emotionally draining, and somebody's got to be there. But even more, I think something that's even more emotionally challenging in dental school than that is just how in the world am I going to get everything done? For example, I actually took an exam this morning, and I woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I was studying all the way up until the time to take my exam, because that was really the only time that I had left to be able to study for that exam, because I was doing so much in the previous week. I think last week was actually the hardest week that I will probably have my first year of dental school. So, I had to make up for the time that I didn't study that week and really just hustle through the weekend. And I think that leads me to another thing as well. So in undergrad, I felt like there was definitely some classes that I had where I felt like I didn't really have to do anything with those classes until maybe a few days before it came time to actually take an exam. And that's just kind of how undergrad was. Not everybody's that way, but I kind of felt like at times I could actually get away with that. But in dental school, you have to constantly keep up on things. And if you have a bad day, you have to just pick yourself up and just keep going, because you really don't have like a whole week to mope about how bad you did on the last exam. You just have to get going. Literally a few hours after you take an exam, it's time to go again. So yeah, different challenges there. Another thing as well, with undergrad, you stress about getting accepted. You also stress out about taking the DAT, whereas in dental school, you're no longer stressed out about taking the DAT. You're stressed about taking the boards. So that's another thing as well. Eventually I'm going to take the part 1 of the NBDE, and so that's coming up. I'm actually getting my study materials now, so it's kind of like this deja vu of, oh, didn't we already finish that? No. And then lastly, let's talk about competitiveness in terms of difficulty. Now, when I say competitiveness as a category, what I mean is how did you interact with other students in undergrad versus how you interact with students in dental school. In undergrad, I felt like students may have been a little more competitive when it came time to getting good grades and, you know, making sure that they were at the top of the list to actually get into dental school. Whereas when you're in dental school, and once again, this really depends on the school, but in my school personally, I feel like everyone is very close-knit and everyone's willing to help each other. You know, we collaborate together, we study with Google Docs, you know, we hand out different study materials online and make sure that everybody's doing okay. And if anybody has like any tips for studying things, they'll share it with the rest of the class. And it's a very mutual, collaborative experience. And I think that is awesome compared to how things were in undergrad. You know, in undergrad, it was a lot of just kind of studying by myself and doing my own thing. To kind of sway one way or the other, I feel like competitively, undergrad was probably harder than dental school. A lot of students in dental school have the aspiration to go on to general dentistry, and that's kind of what they're focused on. You know, me specifically, I want to be a general dentist. I don't really have too much of a passion to actually go into a specialty. I feel like general dentistry is where I'm headed, and that's where I'm actually going to be happy in a career. And now, of course, you always have what they call the gunners. You know, if you haven't heard that term, basically those are the ones that they want to be at the top. They're the ones that get the hundreds on every single test and every single practical, and you know, those are the ones that want to move on into a specialty program. But even with them being as competitive and intense at studying as they are, I still feel like even they are willing to help those around them, just because it's just a different atmosphere compared to undergrad. This is a difficult topic because you can't just say like undergrad is harder than dental school or dental school is harder than undergrad, because they both have their difficult times and their easy times. So you really have to look at it like that. And also just remember that every school is going to be a little bit different. That's my 2 cents on the topic. I hope that helps you guys out. I'm sorry for the ambiguity, but I hope it helped. So thank you so much for watching. You guys are amazing. Thank you for the comments. I love seeing your comments and talking to you guys and getting these videos out to you when I can. So I will see you guys in the next video. Keep living the dream.